My name is Marayet, and for most of my life people believed my silence meant weakness. They mistook my calm for obedience, my quiet for fear, my patience for surrender. But the truth is simple. Silence is where I prepare. And the day they pushed me too far was the day my silence ended. Not loudly, but with precision. It happened on a cold Tuesday morning. I was packing lunch for work when my phone buzzed. A message from my husband, Daniel. At first, I thought it would be something simple, a reminder, a request, a note. Instead, it was a storm written in one sentence. Stop involving yourself in things beyond your value. I stood still, reading it twice. My value? He had never said something so blunt before, never stripped down his disdain so plainly. But the worst part wasn't the message. It was the truth behind it. Because Daniel wasn't talking about chores or decisions. He was talking about my company shares. The ones I built. The ones he wanted. The ones his family had been scheming over for months while smiling at me across dinner tables. I didn't answer him. Not yet. I needed to understand what I had just stepped into. Minutes later, another message came through. Not from Daniel this time, but from my sister-in-law, Amelia. Family decisions aren't democratic. Just stay quiet like always. There it was again. Quiet. As if silence was all I had ever been good for. I sat at the table, breathing slowly, feeling something shift inside me. A click, a realignment, the soundless beginning of something sharp. Not anger, not pain. Strategy. I opened my laptop and checked the shareholder portal. My stomach tightened. Last night, while I was asleep, a new proposal had been submitted. A transfer of voting rights. From me to Daniel. Pending spousal approval. Except I had never approved anything. I scrolled further. A second document popped up. A board meeting scheduled for Friday early morning. My name was missing from the attendee list for the first time since I joined the company 10 years ago. They hadn't expected me to see any of this. They assumed I wouldn't check. Because I was the quiet wife. The one who never raised her voice. The one who listened more than she spoke. They forgot the simplest truth. Quiet does not mean unaware. Quiet does not mean blind. I forwarded the documents to myself, printed copies, and placed them in a plain folder. My hands weren't trembling. If anything, they were steadier than ever. Then I called the only person who had never underestimated me. My attorney and old friend Lydia. She answered before the second ring. Marayet? What happened? They tried to move my shares, I said. Without my consent. A heartbeat of silence. Then Lydia's voice turned razor sharp. Bring everything to my office. Now. I grabbed my coat, keys, and the folder. As I stepped outside, the cold air felt different. Not punishing but cleansing, like I was shedding something I no longer needed. On the drive, I replayed every moment of the past year. The way Daniel dismissed my ideas, the way his family spoke over me, the accidental exclusion from meetings, the jokes about me being too soft to survive in business. They thought silence meant surrender. They thought I was the easiest one to remove. They were about to learn exactly what silence prepares. When I reached Lydia's office, she was standing by the door. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Every detail. Every message. Every sign I ignored. When I finished, she looked at the documents and shook her head slowly. They've left fingerprints all over this. This isn't just unethical, this is illegal. I leaned back in the chair, breathing deeply. What do we do? Her smile was calm, controlled, the same smile she wore in court before tearing someone apart. First, she said, we let them think you're still silent. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed again. A new email. From Daniel. Board wants a united front. Don't embarrass me Friday. I stared at the screen. Friday. The meeting where they planned to strip me of my power. But now I had a plan. And I wasn't walking in as the silent wife anymore. Lydia slid a new document across the table. Sign this, she said. And they'll never see what's coming. I picked up the pen and smiled. I woke the next morning with a strange calm sitting in my chest, as if my body already knew what my mind had not accepted yet. Their silence was not accidental. It was strategy. And my silence? That was preparation, even if they did not know it. I brewed coffee and tried to steady myself, but the minute I opened my laptop, the screen lit with messages I had not seen last night. Dozens of them. From my sister. From her husband. From two numbers I did not recognize. The first one was short. Marayet, please stop overreacting. This will benefit everyone. The second one was colder. You are making things harder than they need to be. Then the third message, sent at 2:15 in the morning. If you keep delaying this, you will regret it. Regret? For protecting what was mine? The threat did not scare me. Clarified everything. I opened the folder I created last night. Evidence. Now it was time to fill it. The first thing I did was call the title office again. The woman who answered recognized my voice immediately. Ms. Marayet? I was just about to contact you. There was another attempted inquiry on your property file. Someone is trying to move quickly. Did they say who? I asked even though I already knew. She lowered her voice. The request came from an attorney representing your brother-in-law. The system flagged it as unusual because there is no authorization from your side. So they were escalating. Fast. Put a note on the file, I said. Any change must be approved in person. By me. Already done, she replied. You should also know. Someone asked for a copy of your signature card. A coldness spread through me. Who? But she answered with the words I expected. Your sister. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat perfectly still. If they wanted my signature card, they wanted to forge it. If they wanted to forge it, they were desperate. If they were desperate, I was closer to the truth than I realized. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. He was older, sharp-eyed, always 3 steps ahead of people who thought they were clever. He listened quietly as I told him everything, the messages, the second inquiry, the signature request. Then he folded his hands. Marayet, they are preparing a full transfer attempt. They think you will freeze, panic, or surrender. You cannot. Not now. I will not, I said. What do we do? He slid a document across the desk. We begin with an identity affirmation. From today onward, no signature bearing your name is valid unless verified through this protocol. Protects you. Corners them. I signed it slowly, carefully, every letter deliberate. A strange feeling washed over me, control. Then he added, and I will quietly request the title office to issue an internal alert. Anyone tampering with your property file will trigger a notification to me and to the county registrar. Even if they use a forged signature? I asked. Especially if they do, he said. I left his office with a plan forming in my mind. They were counting on silence. Submission. Shock. They thought I would hide, cry, maybe beg. Instead, I spent the afternoon pulling every document my sister ever signed, every message she ever sent, every email that carried her tone, her intentions, her impatience. Patterns emerged. Timelines tightened. Motives sharpened. By sunset, I understood something I had never wanted to admit. She had been preparing this long before I discovered it. But so had I. Silence was not weakness. It was gathering. It was listening. It was becoming sharper than her lies. Then at 8:21 my phone buzzed again. A voice message this time from her. I hesitated, then pressed play. Marayet, she whispered, breathless. I need you to trust me. Do not tell anyone about the transfer yet. If you do, everything will collapse. You have no idea what you are risking. Her voice trembled. Fear. Real fear. Not anger, not entitlement fear. And that meant something in their plan had already cracked. Something they did not expect. Something they were hiding. Seconds later, another message came in. From an unknown number. Just 3 words. Check the attic. I looked up. Someone else knew. And if the attic held the truth, it might also hold the reason my sister was terrified. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the dark listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car on the street, replaying every word from the day before. They expected my silence. They expected me to disappear into the background the way I always had. By sunrise, I was done being silent. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the folder I had started last night. At the top of the page I had written one sentence. Silence is the preparation, not a surrender. A strategy. I began by listing every strange detail from the last month. Every whisper. Every shift in tone. Every door that closed when I entered a room. The evidence was scattered, but it was there. I only needed to gather it. The first thing I checked was the shared cloud drive my husband Aaron believed I never used. He had once set passwords confused me, and I let him believe it. But the truth was much simpler. I let him underestimate me. The folder marked consulting work caught my eye. He had never been a consultant a day in his life. Inside it were scanned documents, draft agreements, payout structures, travel plans. But the most important file was a simple memo with a title that made my throat tighten. Transition timeline. My initials. My name. My planned exit. The memo outlined an entire strategy built around weakening my position in our shared assets. It was clinical, almost elegant in its cruelty. Step by step, it described how Aaron intended to separate me from legal authority over our finances, isolate me socially, and transfer the last remaining pieces of my inheritance into a corporate account under his temporary management. He truly believed I would never find this. I scrolled further and found something even more nauseating. Email correspondence. With my sister Liana. She had written, "She trusts you. She trusts everyone. Just keep her calm until the signature date. If she pushes back, I'll take care of it." I stared at those words for a long moment, feeling the familiar ache of old wounds, the years of being the one who held everyone together while being treated as the one they could push aside. Not anymore. I printed everything. Every file. Every memo. Every email. I even printed the metadata logs because documentation is the backbone of truth. When the stack was done, I placed it into a new binder, one Aaron would never expect me to own. By midday, I drove to the one person I knew would not betray me. Ruth, my mother's longtime friend and the only human being who ever saw through Liana's sweetness. The moment she saw me standing on her porch, binder clutched to my chest, she whispered, "Oh honey, who hurt you now?" I almost broke, but instead I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her hands clasped, her eyes brimming with a fire I had not seen in years. When I finished, she said one sentence that shaped the rest of my day. "If they planned this together, they planned it sloppily. People blinded by greed always leave fingerprints." She was right. I spent the next 3 hours in her living room, combing through financial statements, date stamps, insurance records, tax forms, anything that could reveal cracks in their scheme. And the more we dug, the more cracks we found. Transfers made at odd hours. Signatures submitted from the wrong device. Conflicts in dates between Aaron's alleged travel and his official filings. By late afternoon, Ruth pointed at a single inconsistent signature on a document labeled Asset Reallocation Request. "This," she said, tapping the page, "was not written by a calm hand. Whoever signed this was rushing. That is your break." It was the proof I needed. The first thread in the unraveling. As I drove home, the sky dimmed into an early dusk. My phone buzzed with a message from Liana. A single line. "Dinner tonight? We need to talk." The timing was perfect. Almost too perfect. I parked, stepped inside my dark house, set the binder on the table, and whispered into the quiet. "You think I'm silent? I'm preparing." My phone buzzed again. This time from an unknown number. "She isn't telling you everything. Meet me tomorrow. Alone." Someone else knew. Someone inside their plan. And they had just switched sides. When I woke the next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, sharper. As if every shadow along the hallway had witnessed the argument from the night before, and was now waiting for what I would do next. I sat at the table with a cup of untouched tea. Hand steady, mind clearer than it had been in months. They expected my silence. They counted on it. But silence was only the preparation. Now came the movement. I opened my notebook, the one I had started the night I realized the betrayal was real, and wrote one word across the top of the page. Plan. Not revenge. Not anger. A plan. A legal, meticulous, undeniable strategy. Something no one could twist, rewrite, or talk their way around. My first step was understanding the full scope of what they tried to do. I went through every document, every email, every vague comment that had once sounded harmless. Suddenly it all clicked together like pieces snapping into place. They had built a structure, but it was sloppy at the foundation. And I knew exactly where it would crack. By mid-morning, I drove to meet Mr. Harland, the attorney who agreed to help me review the family financial adjustments my sister and her partner had pushed behind my back. He was an older man with a calm expression, the type who had seen decades of lies wrapped in polite smiles. Marayet. He greeted me gently. You came prepared. I have to, I answered. They rely on me freezing. I am done freezing. I handed him the stack of documents. Every decision they made required my approval. They acted anyway. I want to know exactly how much damage they attempted, and how much proof we already have. He scanned the pages slowly, eyes narrowing. When he finally looked up, he said, What they attempted is serious. Very serious. But what they failed to anticipate is that you have everything you need to protect yourself and more. Then show me how, I said. And he did. Piece by piece we built the counterplan. He highlighted forged authorizations. He outlined the legal requirements they had skipped. He flagged the sections of the agreement they had edited without disclosure. He leaned back in his chair. They expected you to be quiet. But if this goes to court, silence becomes evidence. Your restraint becomes credibility. Their actions become motive. For the first time in days, something inside me eased. It was not peace, it was control. Before I left, he added, One more thing. Do not alert them yet. Let them think you are uninformed. People hiding wrongdoing always make more mistakes when they feel safe. I nodded. I can do that. After all, I had already spent years being quiet. On the drive home, the plan sharpened in my mind. I contacted the accountant who once helped my parents with their estate. I asked her to verify signatures, timestamps, and transfers. She agreed immediately. She remembered my family. She remembered fairness. And she had no loyalty to the people who betrayed me. She called back within the hour. Marayet, there are things here you need to see in person. Her tone made my heartbeat shift. Not panic, confirmation. When I arrived at her office, she spread documents across the desk. Look at this, she said, tapping a page. This transfer request does not match your writing style. And look here, this timestamp is before the date you were notified, she added. And this signature, this is not yours. Every sentence was a nail in their scheme. Every inconsistency was a weapon. I asked her softly, Can you prepare copies of everything? And format them for legal review? She nodded. I will have them ready by tomorrow morning. Driving home at dusk, the sky looked like it was holding its breath. I felt the same. My silence had been a cocoon, not a cage. Now I was stepping out of it. At home, I placed all the documents in a clean folder, labeled it carefully, and locked it inside the drawer they once assumed I would never open. The drawer they thought I did not know how to use. And then came the moment I did not expect. A message on my phone from my sister. Short. Nervous. Unlike her usual confident tone. Where were you today? We need to talk. Trent said you seemed different. Different. If only she knew. Before I could answer, a second message appeared. Please pick up. Something happened and you are not supposed to know. I stared at the screen. Not supposed to know what? I spent that night at my dining table, surrounded by papers, printouts, and the quiet hum of my laptop. My silence, the silence they mocked, dismissed, and counted on, was no longer fear. It was architecture. It was planning. It was preparation. They expected me to disappear. Instead, I began constructing the one thing they never prepared for, a lawful, irreversible counterstrike. The first step was simple. I contacted the bank manager, Mr. Harlow, and requested every statement linked to the family account my husband and his sister insisted on managing. When the files arrived, the numbers looked like bruises on a body, withdrawals in steady patterns, small enough to hide, consistent enough to drain. They thought I would never notice. They thought I never paid attention to numbers. But there was one detail they overlooked. Every transaction had a note. Authorized by M. Except I had never been asked. And my name was Marayet, not M. It was the kind of mistake people make when they lie too often. A shortcut. An oversight. A thread waiting to be pulled. The second step was even quieter. I reached out to attorney Diane Ralston, the woman who helped me with my mother's probate years ago. She was calm, sharp, and allergic to manipulation. After I explained everything, the gaslighting, the money drain, the forged permissions, she simply said, "Collect everything. Do not confront them. Let me build the frame while you gather the pieces." That was when my fear finally cracked open. and something colder took its place. I opened my inbox and began combing through the messages I had ignored for months. The tone was always the same. You do not need to worry about this. We already handled it. Sign here. It is just a formality. Stay out of it, Marayet. Every sentence was a confession wearing polite disguise. And then I found the message that made my hands shake. Not with fear, but with adrenaline. A forwarded email chain between my husband and his sister. She will not notice. She never asks questions. Get her signature copied from the old refinance packet. Once the transfer goes through, she has no claim. My chest tightened, but I did not cry. I did not scream. I just whispered, "Thank you for writing your downfall so clearly." The third step was the hardest. Not emotionally, strategically. I needed to let them continue. I needed them to believe everything was safe. If I confronted them too early, they would scatter like insects under bright light. But if I stayed silent, if I played the version of myself they thought they controlled, they would make mistakes. Bigger ones. Documented ones. So for the next 3 days I remained perfectly still. I cooked dinner. I answered casually when spoken to. I said goodnight with a small smile. Meanwhile, Diane filed a discreet injunction request to freeze any transaction involving assets under my name. Not a full freeze that would alert them, but a conditional hold. A legal tripwire. And then the tripwire snapped. On the fourth morning, I received a call from the registrar's office. The clerk's voice was polite, almost cheerful. "Ms. Marayet, we received a property transfer request with your signature. Before we process it, we require your verbal confirmation. May I proceed?" My breath left my body in one controlled exhale. They had moved forward. Confident. Careless. Predictable. "No," I said calmly. "You may not proceed. Please flag the file. My attorney will contact you." The clerk paused. "Understood. For your awareness, the submission was marked urgent. They are expecting rapid approval." I thanked her and ended the call. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. My plan was ready. They thought silence meant surrender. But today proved what silence truly was: bait. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the trees, my husband slipped into the kitchen with the same casual smile he always used before delivering a lie. He kissed my cheek and said, "Tomorrow is a big day, love. Everything will finally be in order." I smiled back. Oh, it would. I arrived at the courthouse early, long before the doors opened to the public. My folder felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Inside it were the documents I had gathered, the recordings, the emails, the timestamps, the quiet proof that my silence had never been weakness. It had been preparation. My name is Marayet, and I was about to execute the plan I had built in the shadows. But even perfect plans shake when real people try to break them. I stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps and inhaled slowly. Today was supposed to be simple. We would present the evidence. The judge would freeze the accounts. My partner, David, would finally face the truth he tried to bury. After months of hiding financial transfers, after lying about business debts, after shifting assets under my name without consent, he would stand under real light. At least, that was the version of the morning I had rehearsed. At 8:22 my lawyer, Ms. Hartwell, called. Her voice was unusually clipped. "Marayet, we have a complication." My stomach tightened. What happened? "David filed a petition late last night," she said. "He is claiming emotional abandonment. He is trying to position the financial transfers as a response to you withdrawing from the relationship." I closed my eyes. "He is rewriting the entire story." "Yes," she said. "And he attached statements from 2 people." "Who?" There was a pause. "Your sister and his colleague." For a moment, everything went quiet inside me. My sister, who knew what I had endured, had agreed to speak for him. Why? What had he promised her? Money? Favors? Influence? Or maybe he had simply told her the version of the story he had invented and she had chosen the easier path, the one that did not require confronting him. I swallowed hard. "Does this change our case?" "No," she said firmly. "But it complicates timing. The judge may ask why you did not confront the issue earlier." Because silence was preparation, I thought. Because speaking too soon would have warned him. Because I had needed to be sure. "We continue," I said. Everything stays the same. But nothing stayed the same. At 8:45, as I stepped inside the courthouse lobby, the air shifted. Across the hall, David stood with his lawyer. He looked polished, confident, rehearsed for sympathy. His eyes were bright with something that made my skin crawl, certainty. He believed he had outmaneuvered me. His lawyer whispered something and handed him a document. He did not look at me. Not yet. When the courtroom doors opened, we took our seats. I placed my folder on the table. The papers were perfectly aligned. My heartbeat was not. The judge entered. Proceedings began. David's lawyer stood first, speaking about relationship strain, about distance, about confusion that led to financial misjudgment. Words chosen carefully to create doubt without sounding harsh. Then he said it. And Mr. Hargrove's attempts to move funds were, in fact, protective measures. He feared Ms. Marayet would take everything and leave. A low murmur rippled through the room. My lawyer stood, objected, corrected, redirected. She spoke sharply, clearly, each sentence designed to slice through fiction. She reminded the court of dates, numbers, account logs. But then the judge asked the question we dreaded. Why, Ms. Marayet, did you wait so long to respond? Why not address the issue immediately? The courtroom fell silent. David finally turned to look at me. His expression said, "Explain yourself. If you can." I rose slowly. My palms were cold. My voice stayed steady. Because, Your Honor, every time I asked a question, I was told my love was not valuable. My presence was not valuable. My voice was not valuable. So I chose silence. And silence gave me space to find the truth. The judge watched me. Thoughtful. She nodded once. Continue. I reached for my folder, the evidence, the trail, the truth I had assembled piece by piece. But just as I opened it, the courtroom door burst open. A clerk rushed to the judge, handed her an envelope, whispered urgently. The judge frowned. This changes the situation. I looked at my lawyer. She looked at me. Neither of us knew what had just arrived. The judge lifted the envelope. Ms. Marayet, this concerns you directly. The judge broke the seal. She looked at the contents. Her face changed. And she said, "We must recess immediately." Something new had entered the battle. Something none of us had prepared for. When the doors of the conference hall shut behind me, the silence felt almost ceremonial. I had spent weeks preparing this moment. Every document, every recording, every thread of truth woven carefully until it formed a net wide enough to catch them all. Across the room, Aaron and Livia stood at the front table, whispering with forced confidence. They still believed they controlled the narrative. They still thought I would arrive broken, intimidated, unsure of myself. They did not know the woman who walked in today. Dozens of board members filled the seats. These were people whose trust had been manipulated, whose votes had been weaponized against me when Aaron insisted that I was emotionally unstable and unsuitable for leadership. All lies delivered with the soft, apologetic tone he used whenever he was hiding a knife behind his back. I stepped forward slowly. My heels echoed across the room like seconds before a verdict. Mr. Lawson, the chair of the board, looked up. Marayet, we appreciate your attendance. We will allow you a brief statement before the committee proceeds. I shook my head once. A statement will not be necessary. I brought evidence. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Aaron's jaw tightened. Evidence of what? I took out the black folder I had guarded like a second heartbeat. Evidence of misappropriation. Evidence of forged approvals. Evidence of correspondence between you and Livia outlining your plan to remove me from my division and transfer authority to yourselves. Livia stepped forward, her voice thin. This is ridiculous. She is trying to retaliate because she was disciplined. I interrupted gently. Livia, the board will hear your explanations after they review the recordings. Recordings? She repeated, her voice cracking in disbelief. I placed the memory drive on the table. Every conversation you believed I did not hear. Every late-night meeting. Every directive you asked subordinates to backdate. All stored, all verified, and all time-stamped on secure servers. Aaron made a low, bitter sound. This is a bluff. But when I handed the printed transcripts to Mr. Lawson, the room fell into a deeper silence. Eyes widened. Pages flipped. Pens dropped. The first transcript alone was damning. Livia instructing a junior officer to approve a transfer that had never been authorized by the committee. Aaron reassuring her that Marayet will stay silent, she always does. I watched the transformation on his face. Disbelief, then fury, then something close to fear. Where did you get these? He demanded. I answered calmly. I obtained them through legal channels. This entire operation has been under internal review for weeks. I remained silent because silence was the preparation, Aaron, not the weakness you believed. Mr. Lawson cleared his throat. We will recess for 15 minutes to review the documents. He left with 2 senior members, both holding stacks of transcripts that would end careers. Aaron approached me. His voice trembling with rage he tried to hide. You do not understand what you are doing. I understand exactly, I said. I am dismantling the trap you built for me. I am returning every lie you crafted to your own hands. Livia leaned closer, her whisper sharp. You think they will side with you? You think they will destroy both of us over this? I do not need them to destroy you, I replied. The truth will do that. When the board returned, the entire room went still. Mr. Lawson looked at Aaron and Livia with eyes that no longer held neutrality. After reviewing the evidence, he said slowly, this committee finds grounds for immediate suspension pending a full investigation. Security will escort you from the building. Aaron slammed his fist against the table. You cannot do this. But the guards had already stepped forward. Livia began to cry, not out of remorse, but because she finally understood that the silence she mocked had just become the foundation of her downfall. As they were let out, Aaron turned to me one last time. You ruined everything. I met his stare without blinking. No. You did. I gathered my folder, the weight of it lighter now. When I walked outside, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You exposed them. Good. But you are not finished. There is something else you need to see. I stopped in the middle of the steps. Whatever I thought this battle was, apparently, there was another enemy still hidden in the shadows. When I stepped into the conference room, the first thing I noticed was how quickly the conversations around the table died. People who had laughed loudly minutes before suddenly avoided eye contact. Papers were shuffled. Chairs slid back. And every single person looked as if they had been caught holding something they were never meant to touch. They expected my silence. Instead, they were staring directly at the woman who had been preparing in silence. Trent sat at the end of the table, jaw clenched, fingers tapping against a folder. He clearly did not want me to see. My sister, Lelia, sat beside him, pretending to look composed, but her hands were shaking. I could see it from across the room. Marayet, Trent said, voice smooth but stretched thin. This is a private meeting. It involves me, I replied. And everything in that folder belongs to me. He smirked. You do not know what you are talking about. I placed my bag on the table, unzipped it, and pulled out the evidence I had been collecting for weeks. Emails printed and dated. Bank statements showing the early withdrawals. Copies of their attempted transfer documents. And at the top of the stack, the certified forensic signature report. The room shifted. Chairs squeaked. Someone exhaled too loudly. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I know exactly what I am talking about, I said. And the moment I walk out of this room, the district attorney will know too. Lelia's face went pale. Trent's eyes hardened, but I saw the moment he calculated that his confidence could not save him now. What do you want? He finally asked. Say it. Everyone has a price. I leaned forward. I want the truth in front of witnesses. A few people stood as if ready to leave, but I held up my hand. Sit. You all played a part in this. They froze. I turned to the woman across from me, the one who had notarized the forged transfer. You signed off on a document that never passed through my hands. Do you deny it? Her lips parted then closed. She stared at the table. Silence was her confession. Next, I faced the accountant. You authorized financial activity from an account requiring 2 signatures. Mine was never there. Explain that. He swallowed hard, sweat pulling at his collar. I was told you approved everything. By whom? I asked. His gaze drifted to Trent. And that was when the room cracked. Everyone began speaking at once, excuses, half apologies, fragments of sentences trying to distance themselves from Trent and Lelia. But I remained still, letting the noise expose them. Finally I said, "Quiet." The room obeyed. I lifted the forensic report and placed it in the center of the table. This signature is proven fraudulent. This transfer attempt is illegal. This entire scheme violates state property law, federal banking regulations, and the terms of our inheritance agreement. Trent's mask slipped. "You think anyone will believe you?" "They do not need to believe me," I answered. "They only need to believe the documents. And they will." He stood abruptly. "You are making a mistake." "No," I replied. "I am correcting yours." I gathered the papers, slid them into my bag, and looked directly into his eyes. "You thought my silence meant weakness. It meant preparation." I took 3 slow steps toward the door. Before I left, I turned back one last time. "By the end of today," I said calmly, "your names will be removed from every document you tried to steal. By the end of tomorrow, you will face investigators. And by the end of the week," I paused, "everyone you lied to will know exactly what you are." No one breathed. I opened the door. As I stepped out, my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. They panicked. They filed an emergency petition. "Come to my office immediately." Whatever they were trying to do now, it was desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. The morning after the hearing felt unreal. For the first time in months, the house was silent in a peaceful way, not the suffocating silence I had learned to fear. I brewed coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching the pale light spill across the yard. It almost felt normal. Almost. But victories like mine never settle quietly. They echo. They reach the people who never believed you would fight back. And they always demand a price. The first message came before 8. From my sister. A single line. "You destroyed everything." I stared at the screen. No apology. No accountability. Just blame, the language she spoke best. I placed the phone face down and let the anger drift away. Yesterday was not about destroying anything. Yesterday was about revealing everything they tried to bury. By mid-morning, Mr. Halden, my attorney, called. His voice carried the same warm steadiness it always did. "Marayet, I wanted to update you. The judge has issued a temporary protective order over the property records. No transfers, no alterations, no claims from any party without your written consent." I breathed out slowly. "So they cannot try anything else behind my back." "Not without consequences," he said. "The investigation into the forged documents will continue. You handled the testimony with precision." The court took note. I thanked him, but something in me still trembled. Not with fear, but with the weight of everything that had happened. Months of quiet observations. Weeks of gathering proof. The endless nights when I practiced each line of testimony so my voice would not shake. I closed my eyes and felt a strange mixture of grief and strength. Silence had once been my prison. Now it was my preparation, my armor, the space where I built the truth. Around noon there was a knock on my door. Soft. Hesitant. I already knew who it was. My sister stood on the porch, eyes rimmed with red, jacket half-zipped as if she had run from her car. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was finally seeing her without the fog of loyalty. "Marayet, can we talk?" I stepped outside but did not invite her in. The boundary was necessary. She twisted her hands. "You made me look like a criminal yesterday." I answered calmly. "You forged my name." "It was his idea," she whispered. "He said you would never use the house. He said you owed us. You knew it was wrong." She looked down at her shoes. "I thought you would stay quiet. You always do." There it was, the truth behind all truths. They mistook silence for weakness. They mistook patience for surrender. I kept my voice steady. Silence is not consent. I stayed quiet because I was watching, because I needed proof, and because I wanted you to reveal who you had become without me forcing anything. Tears welled in her eyes. "Can you forgive me?" Forgiveness. A word so heavy it felt like a stone between us. I did not owe her an answer. Not today. Maybe not ever. "I will not hate you," I said gently. "But I will not let you near anything that belongs to me. Not again." She nodded slowly, accepting the verdict even if she did not understand it. Then she walked down the steps and back to her car, shoulders curved inward like someone carrying a truth too heavy to hold. When she drove away, a strange calm washed over me. Not joy, not triumph. Something quieter, the feeling of finally breathing air that belonged to me and no one else. I returned inside and opened the folder of documents on the table. Every page was a reminder of the battle I never asked for but refused to lose. The day after revenge is not fireworks. It is clarity. It is recovery. It is choosing who you will be now that the storm has passed. And as I sat there, sunlight warming the table, I realized something simple and powerful. They expected my silence to protect them. My silence protected me. That evening, Mr. Halden emailed me one sentence. The district attorney wants to speak with you about pursuing charges. The story was not over. Not yet. When the verdict was read, I did not cheer. I did not gasp. I did not even blink. I simply let the air fill my lungs the way it had not done in months. The courtroom felt brighter, though nothing had changed but the truth finally standing where lies used to be. Trent sat motionless. Elise kept her hands pressed together so tightly her knuckles looked white. They had insisted for weeks that my silence meant surrender. That the quieter I became, the weaker I was. They never understood that silence is not submission. Silence is strategy. Silence is the moment before the storm. The judge's voice remained steady. All fraudulent transfers are void. All forged signatures are invalid. Property ownership remains with Ms. Marayet Hart. Damages awarded in her favor. Court is adjourned. Those words felt like an inheritance of their own. Not money. Not land. But dignity. I walked out of the courtroom, heels tapping on the marble floor, each step sounding like a closing chapter. Reporters tried to speak to me. Lawyers whispered. People stared. But I kept moving until I reached the exit and stepped into the cold air that tasted like justice. Outside, Mr. Carver joined me. You handled this with more restraint than I have seen in 20 years, he said. I smiled. Restraint is what saved me. He nodded, then gave me a small folder. Inside were copies of every document that had crushed their case. The forged transfers, the notary inconsistencies, the wire trail leading straight to Trent, the timeline Elise tried to bury. Keep them, he said. Not because you'll need them again, but because you should always remember what you survived. I held the folder against my chest as we walked to the parking lot. My house, my mother's house, was waiting for me. The place Elise tried to erase me from. The place Trent tried to rename. The place where my silence began, and my voice returned. When I reached the front steps, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The sunlight through the windows was warm. I walked to the dining room and placed the folder on the table. Then I sat, and breathed, and smiled. A soft knock sounded at the door. For a moment I considered ignoring it. But something told me this was a page I needed to turn. I opened the door. Elise stood there. No makeup. No heels. No excuses. Marayet, she whispered. I am so sorry. I let the silence stretch between us. The same silence she once mistook for weakness. You almost disappeared me, I said quietly. She looked down. I know. And I will live with that. I didn't answer. I simply closed the door gently. Not slamming it, not locking it, just ending the conversation she should have started months ago. Inside my phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Carver. Paperwork filed. The title is clean. The record is permanent. Exactly what I wanted. I sat by the window and looked out at the old oak tree. For the first time in a long time I felt something new, not revenge, not triumph, but peace. A quiet peace earned the hard way. People think justice comes with noise, with shouting, with grand gestures. But mine came from stillness, from watching, from gathering what mattered and letting the rest reveal itself. My silence was never a concession. My silence was preparation. And preparation was victory. If you ever find yourself surrounded by people who underestimate you, do not rush to prove them wrong. Let them speak. Let them plot. Let them believe the silence belongs to them. Because when the time comes to rise, rise with proof, not anger. Rise with truth, not noise. Rise the way I did. On your terms. In your time.